Right, my bolo on.
I think so.
Okay.
So, what's your name?
Clarence Herbst,
And then what was your what class were you in?
1946,
And then what was your address during the war?
206 Merrill Avenue,
In Park Ridge, right?
Park Ridge.
Right. So tell us about your brother, your family.
One sister graduated 3 years before I did from Maine Township, and that's it.
And how about, what did your dad, what did your
My dad was a chemical engineer, worked for the Economy Fuse Company in Palatine, Illinois.
And your mom?
From those days, a housewife.
Okay. Was there anybody else living with you during the war?
No.
So tell me about the neighborhood you were growing up in. What was it like?
Lovely. Park Ridge in general was a great place to be born and raised. The people were good, teachers were good. We had homes and food, although some of my classmates from kindergarten, their parents lost their jobs during the Depression, 33, 34, and that sort of thing. So there were some tough times, but Park Ridge was a fine place to be raised.
Right. So, you mentioned the Depression and everything. How was your family affected?
Yeah, my family was affected in kind of a strange way, I think. My father had a job, and it was a good job, and he provided clothing and food, and we just had a nice home, but he worked all the time, never took a holiday during the 30s and all the way through the war.
Really?
And I don't think he took a week off until I was in college.
Wow.
And never attended a football game where I played or a swimming meet, and we never had a picnic, a family picnic.
Really?
Or anything. He was, well, a workaholic.
Was he?
And provided for us, but my mother was the opposite and
Sure.
provided a lovely home.
Right. Yeah, I could understand that. You get a little fearful of your job back then.
Some were, some weren't, and lots of fathers came to the football games, but not mine,
Right.
which was disappointing
Yeah.
for a kid.
I can imagine. So tell us about, what were you like as a teenager?
The thing that we remember, my pals that are still alive and I, we didn't smoke, and we didn't drink anything, not even a beer, and it was wartime, and it was certainly available.
Sure.
And we had an old saying that we don't smoke, and we don't chew, and we don't go with the girls that do. And we've thought about that, and the girls have thought about that too. And I think the answer of why we didn't, we were just having too good a life and time doing what we were doing.
Right.
Going to school, playing sports, we just didn't need it.
Right.
And I find that a very positive part of the life I've been allowed to live.
Right. So what kinds of so you mentioned, you played, what did you do in high school? You played football?
I played football all 4 years, of course freshman ball and then varsity, and then I was a swimmer, and I was on the track team, and I was so bad that 4 of my pals challenged me to a race on the quarter-mile track, and they would run backwards.
Uh-huh.
And I lost to all four of them.
Really?
I was not too swift.
Okay.
Okay,
Were you on the light or heavyweight team?
heavyweight.
Okay. And then what kinds of things I mean, you sound like you were very busy. Well,
Yes.
well, what kinds of things did you do for fun with your pals? And
Whew. Sports. We played baseball in the street and touch football. No basketball. We didn't have baseball at Maine in those days. I wanted to pitch. I was a good pitcher. But, and then we had softball up at Hinckley Field?
yeah, Hinckley Field, or Hinckley Park. Yeah.
And then I was a lifeguard there at Hinckley for a few years, which was fun, looking at the good-looking girls.
Sure.
It's fun to see that it's still there. The disappointing thing is, the diving board and the high dive are gone, and for safety reasons. But now we have skateboards and that sort of thing, which are a lot more dangerous than
Sure.
the old diving boards.
I agree. I miss it too. I like those myself.
So
what did you have any other jobs other than?
my father had a manufacturing factory over in Skokie, and he put me to work summers and Saturdays, and so that's how I earned my allowance.
Oh, okay.
And, it was interesting because lots of other kids didn't do things like that.
Sure.
I did work for the Railway Express downtown Chicago at Christmas time a couple of years,
And what did
unloading freight cars.
Okay.
And then we unloaded a freight car of a couple of them of fish from Wisconsin, iced in wooden boxes.
Sure.
And then we got on the train coming home with the commuters at 6 o'clock in the evening, and they all wanted to push us away because we just stunk of fish. And learned some things there. And some of the guys worked for the post office delivering mail.
Right.
And then I was a mail delivery, the Park Ridge Herald,
Yeah.
which is not Park Ridge Herald anymore. I guess it's the Herald.
The Herald
paper.
Advocate.
Yeah. So I delivered that on Thursdays, and we had plenty to do.
Yeah, you were pretty busy then.
Yeah.
What do you remember anything about about the start of the war? About the beginning of World War II? Do you remember when it started?
Yeah, I was in the basement. My father was painting something on December 7th, and we were in the basement working, and he had the radio on, and that's how we heard about the war starting.
So what was he? How did your dad and how did you react to that?
We accepted what I now consider, because I consider myself a citizen of the world. I've been everywhere twice, all through Russia and Pakistan and India and China. And if you study history going back thousands of years, you find that the winner of any conflict writes the history. The loser does not. And the loser's position is always false, and the winner's is always, they're great.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned over a lifetime is that not everything we heard in the 30s about, and during the war, about how things were going was true.
Right.
And that's a very important lesson for today's people, because there's a spin on everything, and you have to try and unspin it. Whether it's in today's world from Putin in Russia, or from Obama here, you really don't know what the truth is.
Sure.
Because you weren't there.
Right. And did your father or mother say anything to you, or do you remember anything? What was the, what were they?
About the war,
Or like
my
when
answer is no. My father was always at work.
Right.
And got home at 7 at night and was out of the house at 6:30 in the morning. And I cannot remember discussing the war. We followed it as young people.
Sure.
And some of my friends had brothers that were killed and that sort of thing.
Right. Now, did you have any relatives nearby?
None in Park Ridge. I had 3 uncles and aunts and 2 cousins in the Chicago area.
Did any of your relatives or family that you know go into the war? Were they?
No. My father and his 3 brothers were just too young to get into the First World War. And my group, we were just too young, class of 46, even some of 45, too young to get in the Second World War. We just passed it by.
Right.
However, when I graduated from college in June of '50, the Korean War started the next day, and I did not have to seek a job. And the draft board caught up with me very quickly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you?
I was in the Army for 2 years.
Oh, okay. So, back then during the war, there was rationing and food was rationed. How did your mom cope with that, or how did your family cope with the rationing?
My answer to that is just fine. We did have a little plot garden up on East End Avenue on the north end, and grew vegetables and that sort of thing in our backyard, and some up on that plot.
Right.
And I don't see we had any hardships.
Right.
Which sounds strange maybe with rationing and that sort of stuff, but we just didn't.
Right. And gasoline rationing?
Gasoline was tougher. Tires, I think, were the tough thing. But again, there wasn't enough money to really, in the 30s, to travel. In fact, I'm disappointed that we do not have any class pictures from our kindergarten, first, second, third, up through 6th grade. And our reasoning is that our parents couldn't afford
Right.
to hire a photographer. But again, possessions possess, even pictures, and we just had a great life.
Right. So your mom, she didn't go to work during the war, did she?
No.
Okay. Tell us, what was the atmosphere like when you started? You were like what year were you when the war started? That was in 41. So you were like in 8th grade probably.
Yeah, 7th
Right.
or 8th, yeah.
So when you went into the high school, how did the war affect the atmosphere in high school, if at all, or how much?
Being 86, my memory isn't that good, but I do think that it just didn't affect us. Like not smoking or drinking, we were busy and we
Right.
were enjoying life and we were studying and doing our homework. Not nearly as much homework as they have today.
Right.
But I don't think the war affected us.
Right. So who were? Tell us about your friends like that you would hang out with mostly.
Well, Gordon Nelson, he was student council president our senior year in high school, and I still see him. I had dinner with him Saturday night, he and his wife, and I see Ruth Harold Dumont from my kindergarten class of 33, and we skied together and hiked together, played golf together in the early days because there were lots of golf courses around. See Bob White in Prescott, Arizona, and Carol Preby Stayart in Payson, Arizona. Those are the high school friends that I still visit.
And then who did you mostly hang out with during high school? Who was your closest friends?
Well, Bill Gamble, Bob White, Bob Crumweedy, Ray Jensen, Charlie Knudsen, Jim Barbieri, 10 guys,
Sure.
and 5 are gone. 2 have Alzheimer's, and 1 doesn't travel, I think, now. Well, I'm sure he doesn't. And there's 2 of us still kicking around, still travel.
Sure. So we've heard different stories about how some people might get into a little unofficial, not the escapades like siphoning gas or any hijinks like that. Were you guys doing anything?
We didn't. One of the interesting things, though, is that we had, I think that our high school class was divided some into those that did drink and smoke, and I'm not necessarily calling them bad people or bad guys, but our group, most of the athletes and that sort of thing, and class leaders, we didn't. And one of the interesting things that happened was that there were a gang of them came up on Merrill Avenue in Park Ridge, and they threw cabbages through the picture windows of my home, which was rather nasty.
Wow.
But then Bill Gamble had a 4-door convertible, a great car, a bit old obviously, but they cut his tires and cut the roof of the
Wow.
convertible. Now, who they are, I do not know.
Right.
We had words that it was X and Y, but we just do not know.
Okay.
And it was pranks,
Right.
a little bit bigger time pranks than you'd like, but they went on.
Right. So do you? So you mentioned, you told us about what kind of work did you did. You were very busy with athletics and working. Did you do any volunteer things? Did you have time for any of that at all?
Well, I was chairman at Park Ridge, collecting money door to door for a new football stadium that we were going to build, which never was built. I have no idea where the money went. But volunteer work for a church or for others, no, can't remember any.
Okay.
But I am very involved now with Avenues to Independence, you know Avenues.
Yeah.
And because in my lifetime growing up in Park Ridge, during the 30s and 40s when I was around, the people that were developmentally disadvantaged really had no place to go. And the parents really put them out of the house during the day so they could wander. And they were up and down Park Ridge or up and down the streets, cold, rain, whatever. Not that they were put out as punishment or anything, but it was kind of a break for the family
Right.
to let them lead some type of a life by wandering around the town.
Wow.
And that really, and they were not accepted in schools, and that is really the reason that Avenues to Independence exists now,
Right.
to do a better job of that,
Oh, really?
taking care of those people.
Thank God you're doing that. I appreciate that.
Well, it's a duty. Park Ridge has been good to me, and life has been very good to me, and that is due about 90% to luck, not to my good moves. So I've made some good moves, I've made some bad ones, but I've been very fortunate, and the town's been good, and my goal in life at this stage, at 86, I'm going to die broke, and I'm going to get getting very close to both. I'm giving away almost everything I have.
So, getting back here, so when you were, did any of your friends leave high school early to enlist? Or,
No,
okay.
some of our class did, but none of my friends.
Okay. We had heard stories that Maine.
Although, even if we graduated in 45, the war was really
Right.
over. So
Right.
maybe some guys got drafted. No. My mouth works too fast sometimes and too slow sometimes. From 45, and even from our class of 46, they decided to drop out of school and go into the service.
Right.
But they got in the service and the war was immediately over.
Right.
And then they fiddled around for 6 months and were discharged. And some of them, I know two, I think, that joined the reserves. And of course, bang, in Korea, they got nailed again.
Right.
But I was in and I was discharged. Yeah, that's yesterday.
I forgot if I didn't ask you this. When you graduated in '46, and did you go in the military after that?
I went to college, and I graduated from college in June of '50, and the Korean War started the next day.
Wow, but you were
We're
not
not
drafted.
on
You're
camera.
on. You're on now. Yeah.
I'm on camera?
Yeah.
Oh, good grief. Okay.
So and you were not drafted at that time?
Yes, I was.
Oh, you were.
In '50, I was drafted, yes. And that was, the Army was a catastrophe at that time.
Yeah, you told me, right, we about your experience with that.
Yes.
Okay. So Clancy, you were telling me that you've had a variety of jobs that you had.
Well, yes.
In high school.
Growing up in Park Ridge was interesting. It was a great town. Most of the people had jobs. And we, the students in those days, we had clothing, we had food on the table, we had a home to live in Park Ridge. Very nice.
Right.
Very nice. But then the Depression took hold when we were 2, 3, 4 years old. And so things changed depending on our father's ability to keep his job or to have a job.
Right.
And I happen to be lucky in that case. My father did have a job. Changed my life because he became a workaholic and wanted to protect his job, but had spent absolutely no time with his children. No picnics in my lifetime. I played football and was a swimmer in high school, and he never came to a football game or a swimming meet or anything.
Right.
He had bread on the table, though, and a nice home, and so it was a strange time.
Yeah.
The types of jobs I had, I think I mentioned them, but unloading freight cars downtown for the Railway Express Company at Christmas time, delivering newspapers, mainly the city paper that's still available. That was a one-day-a-week job. Of course, cutting grass and shoveling snow with Bill Gamble, a friend of mine, and working at the Park Ridge Country Club as a caddy. That was a very good job. Sometimes on a Friday night, there would, in the summertime, still get a round in with somebody, and Saturdays and Sundays, and it was a good way to earn a few dollars. And of course, our parents didn't have the money to give us substantial allowances.
Right.
The way they get money was to go to work for the bloody
Sure.
stuff.
Right.
And that worked out very well. There was one family that was in, the young boy, youngest son, was in my kindergarten class in '33, and his father lost his job early in the Depression, probably around 33, 34. And that was tough, but they had 3 boys in the family, and they all caddied, and I think they kept the family alive and in Park Ridge with their outside work, meaning caddying and other things. Then there were people, and I talked to 2 of them last night. One young man, he said that he didn't work during the war. His father had a good job, but the main reason he didn't work was his brother was drafted into the service and got some kind of a disease and died within 6 months of being in the service. Never got overseas.
Wow.
So my friend didn't work. That's not the excuse, but the main reason lots of my friends didn't work is we were having too good a time. We didn't realize what the world was, how it was. We knew there was a war going on, but
Right.
and we were all involved in athletics in high school, and with training for football, basketball, and swim and track. By the end of the day, it was 7 o'clock. You had to do your homework. No time really to work.
Sure.
So that's kind of an excuse, but a reality
Yeah.
in those days.
That's right. So so with the war going on, was there as far as at the country club, was it much busier and because people didn't have as much money to spend on anything else, or
Well, the country club seemed to be busy, and not enough caddies because the young guys were off in the war. Or the
okay.
college students in those days were off in the war. So lots of times we'd carry 4 bags down the center of the fairway, and the players would come and get their own clubs from us because there
see.
were no carts. And
So they didn't have since there was no golf carts back then.
no.
So
And if there were a bunch of us, bunch, 2, 3, 4 caddies sitting there, then maybe you'd carry 2 bags and,
Oh, okay.
and spread it out. But when, when you were out on the course with your pal or my pal and my pals all out, then the next caddy had to carry 4.
Wow. That's
There
a lot
was-
of bags.
There was a lot of bags, but they weren't like they are today.
I suppose so.
There were these things today and all the clubs you couldn't handle it.
So that's how come you made so much money, because you were carrying 4 bags then.
Oh, yeah, that was, I don't remember what we got per golfer. I have no memory of that, but it was not bad money,
Sure.
because where else were you going to get money?
Sure.
Movies, we went to the movies on Saturday during the winter and the fall, spring. And I remember that was 10 cents.
Right.
And there were 2 movie theaters, the Pickwick and then the one on the south side, just across the tracks. If you go south on Prospect
Right.
and cross the tracks and immediately turn left.
That's right. Was that? I think I know which way. And it was an ice rink too
They
at one
Made
point.
an ice rink out of it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know of. I've seen pictures.
But
I don't know
that
the
was a
name.
movie theater, and we-
Did you go there too?
Yeah. Then there was a bowling alley above the Pickwick. I don't think that's active anymore, but my father was in the bowling league, so,
Are you sure there was a bowling alley
oh,
above
I'm
the Pickwick?
absolutely sure.
I didn't-
You go around behind and in the alley and
Oh,
up a stair.
behind it, not above it, though.
Oh, no, it's above it. Whether it was above it or next door
Right.
above it, because the Pickwick, I remember, has got a high ceiling.
Yeah.
So it was probably off to the side,
Okay.
to the south side. But yeah, there was probably 8 lanes up
Okay.
there. Yeah, I went up there with my father many times to watch him bowl. The 30s.
So, I heard there was some rumor that some of the caddies might bring their girlfriends occasionally on the golf course. And
Well, we go wandering out there and smooch a bit. Why not?
so,
Nice
so there
walk.
there is some truth to that. I heard.
Oh, yeah, I'll admit to that. But smooching in those days is, it's different than smooching today. I'll
Gotcha. I
put it
understand.
that way.
That's good. Well, thanks a lot, Clancy. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm not sure what other stories I can tell you, except repeating again, a marvelous place to be lucky enough to be born and raised, and to have associated with the people that I have associated with. I told you just a minute ago that I had dinner last night with a girl from my kindergarten class in 1933, but I know 7 women from that class that are still alive that I communicate with. Some I see, 3 I think. But the others I write to because I keep track of my high school class.
Right.
And Monday of this week I sent out my June mailing of pictures and things I collect when I hear from somebody.
Oh, okay.
But it's amazing to know 7 women from 33.
Sure. I don't know too many myself, so
Yeah.
I admire that.
Yeah, and I think I know 4 men. Most of the guys are, well, let's say 4 or 5 are dead, but
Right.
I think I still know 4.
That's great.
It's been a good life, and for any of you watching this at some future date, Park Ridge was, and I think still is, an excellent place to live and raise your children, and that's why I support a place called Avenues to Independence to help other people that haven't been quite as fortunate as I have.
Well, thanks a lot for that, Clancy, and thanks for your time sharing your stories and your memories.
Okay, thank you.